morning to all of you out there. This is not how we normally gather on a Sunday, but thankfully we are blessed to have this sort of technology to let us continue to connect despite everything that's going on. You are here at worship at the United Methodist Church of Johnstown. My name is Jeremy Scott. I am blessed to be the pastor and chief joy officer in this place. A couple of announcements first to get us started. One is we just want to say welcome to all of our online folks. I'm glad you could be with us. I also want to let you know we recently launched our church app, which you can get on either your Apple phone or your Android phone by searching Become More in your app store, and there you're going to find links to the live stream and all the information that you need about the church. I think it's going to be a really useful tool for us in the coming weeks as we try to stay connected when we're not able to gather together. I also want to let you know that for this morning, we will still have our Joys and Concerns time, and in that app, you can actually submit a prayer request that we will share during our worship service. You can also go to our website, johnstown.church/prayers, and send us in your prayer request that way as well, so we know how to be in prayer with one another. And you can do that anytime. You can do it during the week. Whenever you need to do it, you can do that. And then finally, I can't read my handwriting, what the last announcement is. So give me the next slide, please. There it is. Oh yeah, Easter. Little thing called Easter. Our anticipation right now is that our April services will be back and up running as normal. So Palm Sunday and Easter will be as normal, and we're going to have two services, 8:30 and 10 a.m. For that. Okay. So today, along with doing this new thing that we're doing, we are actually still continuing our Lenten sermon on called "Do You Have the Time?" And today we're going to talk about sometimes it is the time to act. And we're going to do that by looking at one of the stories of Jesus, where Jesus is a little out of character, or at least what we feel is out of character. I think we all kind of have in our minds this idea of who Jesus is and how Jesus acted. And I feel like it's usually very stoic and not a lot of feeling or emotion, in it. But today we're going to deal with a story where Jesus actually shows a lot of emotion, an emotion that we're not used to associating oftentimes with Jesus, and that's the emotion of anger. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to it because this is actually a really fun story. But I'm glad you are all here with us. I am glad for our amazing staff who have worked so hard to make sure that we could do this morning. Now I'm going to actually invite all of you to join in our call to worship.
Good morning. Please join me in our call to worship. You are invited to speak your part at home or wherever you are. Do you see what is happening around you?
We see distrust, dishonesty, and exploitation.
What are you going to do about it?
What can we do? We have no real power.
You have access to the greatest power of all.
God give us the strength to do what is right. we'd come to that time in our service where we engage in a holy act of listening, where we share our joys and concerns with one another. We did actually have a concern that was shared over our online process from Sherry, asking, please pray for my mom and cousin. Her sweet aunt passed away to be with her cowboy on Wednesday. She will be missed. Absolutely. So prayers for Sherry. Also, just want to say a joy that I have had over the last couple of days is just watching this church respond to everything that is going on. We had a group of people that stepped up to help folks get access to the live stream, people who maybe needed a little tech assistance. We had some fantastic folks kind of driving all over the place and making phone calls to making sure everybody who wanted to be on the live stream could do it. They stepped up in a big way. And I know over the next couple of weeks, our staff and our volunteers, and especially our congregational care committee, we have this great committee at the church called Congregational Care. And there's a lot of caring that needs to happen right now, and that's going to need to happen moving forward. And they also stepped up in a big way, communicating with a lot of folks and talking with a lot of folks about their needs. So I'm sure that will continue, but it was a big joy for me just to see how fast everybody came together. And of course, I would invite us all to keep in our hearts everyone who's being affected by this coronavirus, our schools, our local community, but also around the world, especially in those real hot spots like northern Italy, where there are millions of people basically being asked to stay at home. So we do pray for all of them that we can all get through this as best as possible. All right. Well, I'm going to invite you to join me in a word of prayer. Gracious, loving, everlasting, ever-present God, we come to that time of the week where we spend some time with you. God, we are now not where we typically are. We are spread to far-flung places. We are joining together in a different way. God, it is in these moments that we are grateful for you. Grateful for the knowledge that you are everywhere we need you to be. That when we are able to gather in our church, you are there. When we are home, you are there. When we are in our cars, when we are out in the community, you are there. So God, we come to you today with confidence, knowing that however we offer ourselves, however we worship, however we gather to hear your good news, however we gather to sing your praises, God, we know and trust that you hear us. So we just ask that you keep us close to you in these times to come. Help us to remember that you are there for us, that you are with us, that your grace and your peace abound. God, we see all that is going on in the world, all the fear, all the uncertainty, and all the doubt. We know that many people, God, are looking for places of hope. So God, where we can be that, where we can be your ambassadors of hope, help us to do it. Where we can be your hands and feet in the week to come, help us to do it. Help us to be inspired to reach out to our neighbors, to show them our love in perhaps a new and different way. And God, for all of us, for all of the concerns that we have, for the things that dwell in our hearts, some of which we do not have words for, we pray your peace in your presence. We are a people, we are a place, we are a community, we are a planet in need of your healing. So God, please send it, as we know you will. So this morning, as we gather wherever we are, however we have, to offer ourselves to you, we lift up the prayer that your Son taught us to pray as one people across the distances in this one place we share together. And we do so saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. So now we do come to that time when we would normally pass the plates, and obviously that's not going to work very well. So I want to just remind you of a couple of things. Even though you are not with us, and we wish you were, our building is still here, and our staff is still working hard on your behalf. If you've ever wondered if that little amount or that big amount you put into the plate makes a difference, it definitely does. And this month, as we are not able to gather in person, it really does. So on your screen, there's going to be information on how you can give online, either through the website or actually straight through text. Of course, you can also mail in your donation. The post office is apparently still a thing, even though I don't think I've put a stamp on an envelope in a very long time. But, however it is, we really do appreciate and really need your support this month, however you can get it to us, just to make sure that we can meet our responsibilities as we go through these coming weeks. So I invite you to consider that.
Voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. Ooh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing, and you say I am strong when I think I am weak, and you say I am held when I am falling short, and when I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours, and I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me, I believe. The only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I find my worth, in you I find my identity. Ooh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak, and you say I am held when I am falling short, and when I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours, and I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me, I believe. Taking all I have, and now I'm laying it at your feet. You have every failure, God. You'll have every victory. Ooh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak, and you say I am held when I am falling short, and when I don't belong. Oh, you say I am yours, and I believe. Oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe, yes, I believe. Oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe.
Hello, everybody.
Hey! What?
What's with the mask?
Are your ears full of wool? There's a virus going around.
I know, my school is closed and everything.
Yeah, and the grown-ups are acting really weird. So I'm being as careful as a mallard during hunting season.
Pete, I hate to say it, but aren't you being a little bit of a drama-llama?
What? Cause I don't want to get sick?
Well, no, but if you want to stay healthy and help people you love stay healthy, there are better ways. The CDC says masks don't help and only certain people should be using them.
The CDC? Sounds like you got your alphabet mixed up there, Ashley. E comes after D.
CDC stands for Centers for Disease Control. It's a bunch of super smart scientists and medical people who help figure out how to deal with all kinds of germs and diseases and stuff like that. And they help us all know how to deal with new scary things, like this coronavirus thing.
I think everybody's just overreacting. I heard that most people will just have a cold. Who's scared of a cold? And you look stupid.
What? Well, my grandma's scared, and you look like a big fuzzy donkey.
Hey, what's wrong with donkeys? Nothing. Okay, everybody calm down. Brandy, weren't you helping Pastor Jeremy get the live stream set up? Okay, good. Go do that. I'll help out here. Now, Peep, name calling is not okay.
I know. Sorry, I got my feathers ruffled.
And Lily, making fun of him wasn't okay either. He's your friend, and he's scared.
You're right. I'm so sorry, Pete.
Okay, you two, now, let's get a few things straight here. You're both a little right and a little wrong. Lily, you're right. Most people who get the coronavirus will be just fine. They'll get a fever, cough, kind of like a bad cold for a few days, and then they'll be okay.
But what about kids and grandmas?
Well, CDC says most kids and adults will be okay, but people who are older or who have other health problems might get much sicker. That's why we have to be careful not to share our germs, even if we are okay.
See? Mask.
But the best way to keep from sharing is to keep out of crowds, which is why normal church and school are canceled right now. Oh, and try not to touch your face and wash your hands.
But I don't have any hands.
Neither do I.
Okay, hands, wings, hooves, whatever you touch doors and stuff with. You have to wash with soap and scrub really good for like 20 seconds before you rinse.
So I have to have a stopwatch in the bathroom now?
Wait. Is this why my mom keeps asking me to say the ABCs while I wash? I thought maybe she just didn't think I knew it well enough.
Yep, the ABCs is about 20 seconds long, so if you scrub with soap the whole song, you're probably doing a good enough job.
Oh, and I heard we're supposed to bump elbows instead of shaking hands.
That's a good one, too.
Oh, so I can take this thing off my beak?
Did a grown-up like a doctor or a nurse tell you to wear it?
Well, no.
Then yeah, you can take it off.
Okay, hold on. Whew, man. That's so much better. But I guess I should go scrub my wing feathers before I visit Grandma.
Me too. I may not be worried about getting sick, but I'll try to help everybody else if I can.
Exactly. Really, we just need to do what Jesus told us to do.
Wait, Jesus was a doctor too?
No, he wasn't a doctor, but he did tell us to care about the needs of others. Remember? Love your neighbor as yourself? Well, wouldn't be very loving to make your neighbor sick.
Oh, I get it. And I really don't want my neighbor to make me sick. I want to have fun with all this time off school.
Wait. What if I get a sore throat? Or a cough? Or a fever? Or what do I do?
Whoa there, Feathers. You tell a grown-up. Let them help you figure it out.
Lily's right. If you feel sick, just make sure your grown-up helpers know right away. If you need to see a doctor, they'll get you there. But most people are going to do what we normally do, which means cartoons and drinking lots of fluids on the couch in my family. But you should definitely stay home and away from people until a grown-up tells you it's okay.
Oh, phew. Okay. That's just like when I had the duck flu last winter.
And if you need to talk, Pete, you can always call me, even if we can't visit each other. I promise I won't make fun of you again.
Hey, you two. Why don't we all say a quick prayer together?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. Hello, God.
Hello, God.
Thank you for all the people in our lives.
Thank you for all the people in our lives.
Help us to help each other stay healthy.
Help us to help each other stay healthy.
Help us stay strong and brave.
Help us stay strong and brave.
And help everyone get through this.
And help everyone get through this.
And we can't wait to see our friends at school again.
And we can't wait to see our friends at school again.
Amen.
Amen.
I'm going to go wash my hands.
Me too.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Today's scripture reading comes from the book of John, chapter 2, verses 12 through 22. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they remained there for a few days. The Passover of the Jews was near, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple, he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and the money changers seated at their tables. Making a whip of cords, he drove all of them out of the temple, both the sheep and the cattle. He also poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. He told those who were selling the doves, "Take these things out of here. Stop making my Father's house a marketplace." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." The Jews then said to him, "What sign can you show us for doing this?" Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The Jews then said, "This temple has been under construction for 46 years, and will you raise it up in 3 days?" But he was speaking of the temple of his body. After he raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scripture and the word that Jesus had spoken. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Well, welcome again. We are continuing our Lenten sermon series on Do You Have the Time? And today's is called Time to Act. And it involves really one of my favorite stories about Jesus. And I know I pretty much say that with every story about Jesus, that it's my favorite story. But he has just so many good stories. And this one is especially interesting because we get to deal with this idea of Jesus actually showing emotion. And as I said at the beginning, I think we don't necessarily deal with this well, judging by the common depictions of Jesus. This, actually, right now on the screen is one of my other kind of favorite depictions, and it's this idea of laughing Jesus. And when you first see it, I remember when I first encountered it, it was almost a little bit like shocking, this idea that I'm like, because every other picture is Jesus usually like looking very holy or solemn, or like, let them come to me, that kind of thing. He usually also looks very German. But this one, I saw it and I said, well, oh my gosh, like, of course he laughed. Like, of course, like, there were times when he and the disciples were, like, sitting around the campfire at night, and Peter would say something completely inappropriate, the way that Peter always says inappropriate things. And of course they, like, laughed and, like, had a good time. Like, well, of course these things happened. We think about Jesus, and we remember the fully divine side, but we also sometimes forget the fully human side. So we have this depiction of Jesus laughing, and maybe that's a little striking to us, but maybe even a little harder for us is actually the one we're dealing with today, where it's quite clear that Jesus gets angry. Like he walks into the temple, and he is not happy. Now, the temple, you have to understand, during Passover is going to be very, very full. There's a lot going on. So there were many festivals every year, and it was expected that people of the Jewish tradition would gather together, and you were supposed to come to them as many of them as you could. So a variety of people from like all over the place would come to the temple, and one of the biggest one was for Passover. And if you didn't live near the temple on a regular basis, one of the reasons that you came was to do the things that a good Jew of the day was expected to do, which was to offer your sacrifices and to pay your temple tax. I think it would be really great if we could just tax people again. We wouldn't have to pass the plate. We could just send people like tax bills or something. I think that would be good. You probably don't think that would be good, but it would make my life a lot easier. But that was the expectation, right? I mean, so people traveled from all over, and in order to do the things that they needed to do, they had to have the right stuff. And there were kind of this list of things, if certain things had happened in your life, if, good, bad, whatever, you were supposed to sacrifice a dove or a goat or a pigeon or whatever it was. There's actually a story in one of the other Gospels about Mary and Joseph going to the temple and offering a sacrifice of 2 doves for the birth of their child, Jesus. So people would come, and some of them would have like a year's worth of stuff to do, and that they were required to offer sacrifices for, and some of them came from a long ways away. And I don't know about you, but I'm not sure if I had a long distance to travel, probably by foot, I would want to bring like a bag full of pigeons with me to offer as a sacrifice. Like I don't think that's going to work out very well. So what you do is you buy it when you get there. Okay. So this is why there are money changers and people selling stuff in the temple, is that people needed it. And of course, as you would expect during festival days and demand increased, the price tended to go up. The other problem that folks had is if you want to pay the temple tax, you can't pay the temple tax in just any old money, right? Because most people lived in a part of the world where they used Roman money or somebody else's money. Well, that money had like pictures of Caesar on it. You can't pay what you owe God with graven images of Caesar, right? So that's why there are money changers too. All the merchants would take the Roman money, like that was fine. But when you actually needed to pay the temple, you had to trade it in for special money at the temple that you could then pay it with. And they only made so much of this, and there was only so much of it to go around. So the exchange rate was like terrible, and so Jesus walks into this environment and says, "Well, wait a minute, you're like charging people a ton of money for these animals over here, and you money changers are charging people an exorbitant rate so that you can trade in one kind of money for another kind of money, so you can pay the temple tax." Right? Oh, and by the way, the temple is going to sell those coins back to the money changers later, right? So everyone gets their cut. And Jesus is like, no, this is not okay. This is not how it's supposed to be. You've taken something that was supposed to be sacred and holy and important. You were taking something that was really like a spiritual obligation, and you've turned it into this way of profiting off of all these people all the time.
And so Jesus comes in and he's like, this is not right. We can't do this. Now, what's interesting is where this takes place in the Gospel of John. So if you've noticed, we're only at chapter 2, right? We're only at the very beginning of Jesus' ministry. Not a lot has actually happened at this point. And in fact, he's only done one other sort of public thing. He's done one miracle, and it's the first miracle in the Gospel of John, and that's, of course, him at the wedding turning water into wine in order to keep the party going. That's pretty much what happened. And so that happens, and then it says basically immediately, everyone who was at the party, so this is Jesus' mother and all these folks, at the party, then go to the temple, because it's almost Passover, and then the next thing that happens is this moment where Jesus goes in, kind of flies into almost like a rage, makes this whip of cords and starts tossing things everywhere. This is the beginning of Jesus' ministry in the Gospel of John. Turning water into wine to keep the party going, and then going into the temple and making a huge spectacle of himself. Now, what's also interesting is that the other Gospels record this story, but they actually put it at the end of Jesus' ministry. They put it only a few days before the crucifixion. So one of the things we're left to conclude is that he might not have done it once, but he might have done it twice. But I often think, what an interesting way to introduce yourself to the world at large. Okay, so Jesus is obviously upset. He's kind of mad at what's going on, and it's really interesting to look about how this has been depicted in art in different places. So this is kind of one of the standard pictures we see, and here's Jesus, with his whip, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" So we see this one. Let's go to the next one. This one really kind of, it really kind of gets it down, or he's got that thing going. So you can kind of really see, like how, really how angry and almost like violent this was. And then the next one, I guess even in the Lego world, Jesus did the same thing. So there you go. And then we got the next one. And I like this one. Because you can tell the artist is really struggling with the theme of this, like what's going on here and what Jesus is. And you almost have this picture of Jesus kind of like, almost like, ugh, right? Like it's just like, kind of like a very shallow push, But one of the clues we have in Scripture that no, it really wasn't like that, was when Jesus does speak and give his line about you've turned this into a den of robbers, that line actually ends with an exclamation point. And if you've ever noticed, the Scripture writers and translators are very, very stingy with exclamation points. They don't end every sentence or every text message with an exclamation point like we do today, right? Like they're very, very stingy with them because they want to make sure they reserve them only for times when they really mean what they're supposed to mean, which is this is really a big deal. And so this one I don't think really accurately captures the moment where Jesus is like, it was definitely more than that. And then we got one more that I think is a little bit better. Yeah, we got people kind of running all over the place. And there we got Jesus up there like that. So what's interesting about this moment, both this story and the story before, is that Jesus sees something wrong. Now, in the first miracle, the thing that he sees is wrong is they've run out of wine. Not such a big deal. In this case, he sees something else that's wrong. He sees basically an injustice happening, not to him, but to all these other people. And what he sees is the most vulnerable people, the people who've come from the farthest away, the people who have the least opportunity to bring what they actually need with them, people who probably don't even speak the dominant language of the time, who have limited resources. They see them coming in, Jesus sees them coming in to what is supposed to be an important religious festival, and then this giant group of people there just waiting to take advantage of them. And Jesus gets mad, and he doesn't get mad for himself. He gets mad on behalf of all these other people because he sees that this is not how things should be. This is not how this should work. Of all places but this place, we should be different here. In God's house, in God's temple, things should be different. And so that's what drives Jesus to action, not necessarily something that happened to him, but seeing how all these other people are being treated, seeing the injustice that's happening around him. He can't help but in that moment to act. And I think in life we encounter these moments. I think in life we find these moments where we look around and we say, this is not right. The world is not the way that it's supposed to be. We need to do something different. So that brings us quite obviously to the story of Florence Nightingale, because how could it not? Right. Obviously, you all knew we were going there. Sure. Florence Nightingale is actually a really interesting figure, but I'm not saying that because my wife's a nurse. But she's a really kind of famous figure, but also a little bit misunderstood as to what her role is. And there's a lot of interesting things about her. First and foremost, she was actually a person born to wealth. She was born to wealth. She was born to privilege. She didn't need to work. She didn't need to have a job. She didn't need to do any of it. In fact, she was expected to not. When she was born, in the early 19th century, the expectation was if you were a woman of a powerful, wealthy family, you would eventually marry somebody else who was, probably of your similar stature, and your job was to host dinner parties and, keep a house and all those sorts of things. Somewhere in her teenage years, though, Florence discerned for herself a different path. And she did it through this a series of very actual, profound experiences of God. Florence was also a person of deep faith, and while in her life she would write a number of books on nursing and on medical issues like that, she also wrote a couple of books on theology and the Bible and God. And in her teenage years, she felt really a deep sense of calling and conviction that her life really wasn't supposed to be what everyone expected it to be, but that was something else that she was meant to do. And the thing that she was meant to do was to help other people. And so she traveled and she sort of went in search of a place that she could be a blessing to others and help serve others. And she eventually ended up in the medical field and really becoming active in that area at a time when the world of medicine was not considered something suitable to women. And what's fascinating is now we really do associate nursing, the nursing profession, with women, though it's not all women, nor should it be. But in her day, that was not the case at all. It was considered women were considered to have the temperament or the ability to do these sorts of things. Florence disagreed, shall we say. And not only trained herself, but she set up schools to train other people. And then eventually, a war broke out in Europe called the Crimean War. And during the Crimean War, Florence kind of talks somebody into sending her and about 30 other nurses that she had trained to go and help in the medical fields for all these soldiers that he knew was being hurt. Now, to kind of imagine the Crimean War, you have to realize that this happened about 10 years before our Civil War. So think about, like, in the Civil War, like how those wars were fought and what medical conditions looked like or really didn't look like, and those states of things, and you really get an idea of what the Crimean War was like. And she shows up, and she is just immediately appalled at everything she sees going on. The condition of the men who are injured and how they're being kept and how they're being treated and how dirty everything is. And she really develops this really kind of crazy radical notion that if you want to help people get well, maybe you should keep the area around them clean. I know, nutty idea. And she really pushed for also really crazy ideas like washing your hands, which seems delightfully appropriate to today, and keeping sick people further separated from each other also seems delightfully appropriate for today. And all that sort of stuff. And she just looks around, she's like, this is not right. This is not how this is supposed to be. And she recognizes, I can't fix this on my own. I'm going to need help. So she sends a letter back to the British government by way of the largest newspaper in Britain of the day. So she gets it to them by having it published in this giant newspaper, basically describing the conditions and saying, you all need to do something. You have to take care of these people. And so back in Britain, they actually developed a prefabricated hospital. It was the first time they'd ever done this. They developed a prefabricated hospital they could build in Britain and send there. And by the time Florence's work began to take root, she was able to drop the number of people dying from things like infectious disease and all that kind of stuff by an order of magnitude, right? It was 1/10 of what it was before. That is the impact that she had, not just herself, but all these other nurses that she had trained, but it was the impact that she had by seeing something that wasn't right, drawing people's attention to it, calling people together to say, we can do better than this. And after the war, she would actually go on and continue to do this. And really, her honest gift at the end of the day really wasn't even as a nurse. Her honest gift at the end of the day was as a statistician. She had this amazing ability to blend stories of actual people being hurt by the poor precautions that we're going to be taking with the hard numbers that showed that you could actually make improvement. She didn't need to do any of this. She had enough wealth and enough power. She had enough money that she could have been okay for the rest of her life. Her children could have been okay for the rest of her life. But instead, she found herself called to something different. She found herself called to act. She saw something wrong in the world, something that needed to be different, and she felt called to do something about it. Now, typically I have two illustrations for these kinds of things, but we're actually going to do something a little bit different right now, which is I'm actually going to invite somebody forward to come and sit with me. We're going to have a very short little conversation about this because I'm going to have basically a living example for today. And the one that is coming forward is our own Christy Duval, who is a longtime member of the church, also one of our co-youth leaders here at the church, along with, I don't know, how many other roles you have?
A few.
Just a few?
Just a few.
Just a few. Okay. So you confessed something to me earlier that I think was really helpful. So I gave her these questions ahead of time, unless you think I'm really torturing her. And that is, you are kind of more of a conflict avoider kind of person.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Probably the hardest question you could ask me.
Oh, good.
So.
We got it right on the first try.
Uh-huh.
But I think that's great, because I think a lot of us are. I think by nature, a lot of us are, like, we try to make people happy. We try to, build consensus. We do all those things.
Right.
So it's sometimes a struggle. So
Right.
the questions I shared with you,
Yes.
that disclosure
Yes.
out there, have you ever been in a situation that you knew wasn't right? Like you saw something happening to somebody and you're like, that's not okay.
So I'm also a teacher.
Right.
And when a kid confesses to me that something is not right, either at home or with another student, I have to act. And I'm legally obligated to act. I'm a reporter. At times I do have to make a phone call or sit down with another child and help solve a situation. And that may not be a huge thing, but I have to protect kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And it varies by states. In some states, pastors are mandatory reporters too and everything. Mm-hmm. And I know when I kind of went into this job, that was not a part of it I was considering. I mean, you consider a lot of it, and you kind of know that, like, oh, there's going to be funerals, there's going to be people who are going to be, but that other piece of it where you're like, oh, like, somebody's being harmed, and I'm going to need to, like, tell somebody, even though they don't want me to.
Right.
That kind of piece. I was not prepared for that aspect of the job. Was that something you thought about when you went into teaching, that was part of the gig?
Absolutely not. Thankfully, it doesn't happen often, but it does.
It does.
Happen every once in a while.
It does. Do you have a way of kind of like figuring it, like, what's the threshold between this is just like kids being kids, or this is just this versus no, this is time, it's time to take action?
Yeah, we have a protocol that we follow.
Oh, okay, so actually, like, written out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which is great.
Yes.
Yes.
That is nice. It is
Yes.
nice.
Yeah.
It is nice. Now the problem is for every like there's so many situations in the world where which there are no protocols.
Right. So it
Yeah.
is good to have that, and it's helpful, and probably the hardest thing I do in my job.
Absolutely. Have you ever felt like turning over the tables?
No.
No, never felt that way. Like, oh my gosh.
Well, probably. I want to make it right. I want to make a kid's life right.
Sure. Absolutely. So in today's story, this picture of almost like this angry Jesus, how did that strike you? Is it something that you thought of before, or?
Probably I have thought about how Jesus is not typically like that.
Yes.
Jesus is typically very calm, very loving, very kind, and that does seem very out of character for him.
Yeah.
And so he must have been really affected by it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Good. So, what would you say to folks who might be in that situation of, especially something involving a child? Like, I think also the criteria is different if it's a kid.
Exactly.
Right? Like the thresholds are different. There's one
Mm-hmm.
thing if it's two adults. I just think that it's just the thresholds are different and they're lower
Right.
When it's a kid. So if you do have a situation, like if you're not a teacher, not a pastor or anything like that, and you've got a situation with, involving kids, like what would you tell people to do?
To investigate, but then to talk to somebody who knows what to do.
So maybe their teacher, if it's his kids in school, maybe their teacher, or, honestly, I mean, people come to me with stuff sometimes like that and say, hey, this thing's going on, what do you do? And I don't always have the answers, but I can usually help find somebody who does.
Exactly. Find that person who can do it.
Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing when you have, like, when you talk to a teacher or a pastor or whoever, is somebody who's used to dealing with it, or not used to, but at least has some experience with situations. They know who to call, they know who to talk to, or they know who to tell you who to call and talk to.
I think one of the things, too, that we need to be really careful in our society of is taking things to social media. I think sometimes we take things to that platform to turn the tables, and that's not always the best thing, too.
Right. So maybe if you have a concern, the first thing to do is not to blast it out on Facebook.
Right.
Oh my gosh, can you believe?
Right.
But yeah, that's good advice. I like that.
Is that good
That's
advice?
good. All right.
All right.
Well, thank you, Christy. Thank you. This
you.
is a bit of an experiment for us. We thought, hey,
All right.
what can we do different now that we're doing things a little different this Sunday? So you were brave, and I appreciated it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we find ourselves in an interesting time. I think we find ourselves in an interesting few weeks. And it is a time that has not only some challenges to it, but it also has some opportunities. Frankly, we are all going to be given the opportunity to act in different ways over the next couple of weeks, and especially how we care for each other and relate to each other, and how we really live out our call to love God, love neighbor, and love ourselves, which is the first phrase of our church. And I also think in the next time to come, the third phrase of our church is going to come up a lot, which is, you can't do everything, so do something, right? I don't know how to fix everything that's going on. I certainly don't know how to help people who are actually sick. That is not my forte. But there are things I do know how to do, and there's certain things I do know how to care for folks. And there's certain things we all know how to do. So how are we going to act in the next few weeks? How are we going to love each other and support each other through everything that is coming? And I think there's some very basic things we need to remember, besides wash your hands, but wash your hands. Wash your hands, people. Not just that, but also, while we're not able to gather in person, think about making the phone call or the FaceTime call or whomever. To your friends, of course, but then also think about those who may be experiencing a little more loneliness and a little more isolation in this time. Think about those who may not be the first person on your most frequent call list, but would benefit to have somebody reach out and let them know, hey, we know you're there. We want you to know that we love you. Right? So think about who those people are. Who has God put in your life that you can reach out to in that way? Because thankfully, as far as we know, germs don't spread through the phones yet. So that is a very safe way to do that. The other thing is, if you are, you're well, if you haven't shown any symptoms and you're not a vulnerable person, also consider taking something to somebody. People who are needing to avoid crowds, may have needs. So the other thing, when you reach out to folks, ask them, is there anything you need? Is there anything we can bring you? Is there anything you're running out of? We're going to cook this for dinner tonight. Can we bring you some? I think that's important too. And then finally, this is probably the most difficult one. If you find yourself as one of the people who are in the more vulnerable category, one of those people who needs to kind of stay away from crowds and stay away from people, you don't have to do that alone. You can ask for help. You can call somebody and say, hey, I need this, or would you mind just talking to me on the phone for a little while, or whatever. And we don't like to do that because we don't want to be a burden. But let me put it to you a different way. When somebody reaches out to me and says, I need help with this something, or can you do this for me? I very rarely feel burdened by it. I feel blessed. I want to believe that the folks that we have running around helping all of our folks with their technology, I want to believe that those folks feel blessed in doing it. I'm looking at one of them right now who's been doing it, and I'm waiting for him to nod his head in affirmation. Oh, good, he nodded his head. Great. You do. You feel blessed. You feel blessed when you get to love your neighbor. You feel blessed when you get to serve your neighbor. So if you're a person in need of something and you don't ask, you're almost stealing the opportunity for that person to be blessed. Don't do that. Reach out. Call the church. Email the church if you're not sure who can help. Call your friend. Call your neighbor. Call your grandson. Let them know that you're there and let them know what you need. Give them the opportunity to have that great warm feeling inside we get to have inside when we serve each other. Jesus saw something in the world that wasn't right. And he decided not to just walk past it. And he decided not to ignore it. He decided not to just snicker about it with his friends. He saw something in the world that wasn't right and chose to take action. Sometimes in life, we are called to do the same. We are called to be the people who see something that isn't okay. When we see somebody who's being harmed or mistreated, and we are called to be the people who take action. Because in that moment, that is truly how we be the hands and feet of Christ. Amen.
It is really hard to do this in front of a completely empty room, so I just want to say you all did great. Wonderful job. You set a great standard for the next couple of weeks. Well done. All right, well, for all of you out there, and apparently the many of you eating pancakes from what I see on Facebook, thank you for joining us and being with us this morning. Receive now the blessing. Let us go. Let us go into that world that God created. Let us go finding our opportunities to act and not hesitating to do so. Let us go to be Christ's hands and feet, anywhere and everywhere we can be. Let us go, and go in peace. Amen.